All right, welcome everyone to the Value Add Podcast. I'm joined today by Heidi Henderson with Engineer Tax Services. Heidi, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Matt. I'm excited to be here. I've always enjoyed working with you guys and with your team. I think you guys are amazing, and we're both lucky to be in the beautiful Las Vegas Valley. So it's great to connect.
Well, I appreciate your partnership both on the tax engineer side and also being an investor in our funds. It's been a great ride. And today I'm hoping to take 20, 30 minutes. The whole premise of what we do at the Value Add Strategy Podcast is our goal is to inspire entrepreneurs to either get into business or those that are already in business for themselves to kind of stick it through and have a real clear dream and a path and a why as to why they are showing up every day, grinding away, going through those rough patches to see the light at the end of the tunnel and to achieve their goals and dreams. So I know you've done that, and I'm honored to have you here with us today. And I'm hoping we could kind of get a little bit more insight into your background, kind of how you ended up at Engineer Tax Services. Where'd you grow up, first off?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, going way back, my dad was a Chevron executive. We grew up, I was born in Seattle, but we spent about 10 years in Northern California.
Okay.
And he had a brutal commute back then, taking the bus 2.5 hours. Yeah, every morning, 2.5 hours every evening to downtown San Francisco. And he was a grinder. And later we moved to Portland, Oregon. So I graduated high school there and then landed in Utah. I mean, I've lived in a few different places, but ultimately landed in Utah for 25 years. In that mix, I became an accountant. I'm very analytical. I like the numbers, but I joke now that I'm a reformed accountant because although I by nature tend to be introverted and very analytical, I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak. And I saw opportunities around me. And I thought, I don't want to sit in this box just crunching numbers and looking at spreadsheets for the entirety of my career. I think there's more. And as we started to go in, and this is, looking back at 2007, 2008, my accounting career had always been in the real estate world. And so my first husband and I had a custom home construction company. I was working for a very large destination resort with a golf course and ski resorts and commercial and residential developments and, these beautiful projects. And then let me tell you, 2007 hits and you see failure. We saw people, friends, I had many friends, many people that were in real estate, in development in all different areas. And I saw the ups of the ups and I saw the lows of the lows. It was kind of interesting because I look back at it now and I think, gosh, how long ago was that now? We're going on to 20 years before long. And I took a leap of faith because I said, you know what? I can always go back and find an accounting position. I want to be brave, which is a little scary. I
It
am
is.
actually risk averse, personally, but I did take a leap. And that was to look at, and of course, my sister is actually one of my business partners who is not risk averse. And she actually said, hey, let's look at this opportunity. I think we can dive into looking more at incentives and being really strategic on how there are opportunities for tax to roll into real estate in ways that are incredibly beneficial to investors and entrepreneurs. And we see people become hyper successful. And it's an incredible industry. And then it's very odd how you can blend like tax with real estate and how this whole thing kind of comes full circle. But that's kind of how I ended up in this space. It was kind of through accident, but by taking a leap of faith. And I've always found that the biggest rewards I've had in my life were always on the other side of the absolute scariest decisions of my life. But it is what's resulted in the biggest blessings. And not always, sometimes we fail, but success can be on the other side as well.
So let me ask you a lot. You said a lot there, but
Yeah.
you mentioned a word that I just wanted to point out is bravery. And
Mm.
and for you, your journey from being an accountant to being more of an entrepreneur now and a business owner and taking risks and being an investor. And given that you're more risk averse, how do you personally summon that bravery to do those things to bridge the gap between safety and risk in the end goal of kind of achieving what you want to live and the dreams that you want to fulfill?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. You know what I think it has required, at least for me, and I think this is what maybe something I've learned personally. I come back to my sister, who has been my business partner and someone obviously I've been working closely with now for, I mean, my whole life, but in work 15 years. We are very different in personality and in scope and the way we view things. She has a high tolerance for risk and she will
Okay.
just jump headlong in and be like, I don't know, let's see how this goes. Um,
Okay.
I, being on the accounting side, I will overanalyze all the things. I see
Sure.
many people who will do that. The people that overanalyze, I find they end up with analysis paralysis.
Yep.
So they don't do anything
Yep.
because they analyze it
Everything
to
to
death.
death. Yeah.
Every deal, every project, every opportunity. And when
And they
you
never take
analyze it
any action.
exactly, Kim, on the other hand, is like on the other side of it. Like I say, she's like, cool, let's try this and just jumps in. What I have found is that, I think if people can partner with someone they trust, whether it's a mentor, whether
Okay.
it's someone where they can recognize the differences and be able to combine those. So we're empowering those areas that are weakness in ourselves and then really highlighting the strengths in ourselves so that we have the best of both worlds. I think it is the best opportunity in the world to blend that stuff together and have a team or have someone where you can. I think you have to be able to recognize where your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Weaknesses with ideally other people. And we can always evolve and grow and change, right? That's always possible.
Yep.
Although I'm in my 50s now and I kind of say, you know what? There is a component of this that I am who I am.
Hmm.
And my personality, although I have evolved and changed dramatically through my life, I still have certain strengths and weaknesses. And I have found it easiest to find the right partners to work with that I can trust and rely on, and that we work together and create a stronger team together than individually. So for me, that's been something that's, I think, the most powerful.
I think that's a great distinction. And I think that's what makes partnerships work, or what makes them not work for that matter. If you have two people that are very risk averse entering into a business together, they're probably never going to do anything. Back to your analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
But if you have two people that are dive right in risk takers, that business may not work that well either because they have no guardrails. They're just taking risks blindly. So you got to counteract and balance each other out. And that's what makes a great partnership. Perhaps one of those individuals is in sales, the other one has an accounting background, one is more risk averse, one is less. And I've found the same thing because we buy a lot of properties from partnerships, and we could see firsthand the ones that are working and the ones that aren't. And
Yeah.
some of our best deals have come from the ones that aren't, if I'm going to be completely honest with you,
Yep.
where there's these disputes exist with a partnership, because usually those disputes exist because they're too similar in their
Mm.
personality and their operating procedure. So actually, from my experience, opposites work out better in
Yeah.
partnerships in business.
That's what I have found as well. I think both people have to really find value, enough self-awareness to understand where their weaknesses are and to accept that.
Yeah.
So the egos have to die in some parts
Yeah.
of ourselves to where we recognize that we need and want the strengths of this other person to fill that gap. And I really think both people need to have that to where you can create that more exponential growth or power. And I totally agree with you.
Just that vulnerability and that brute honesty to say, hey, I'm weak in this area, you're strong, or I'm strong in this area, you're weak. Let's be honest with one another and see how we could promote the business by
Yeah,
really focusing in on what our strengths are and
exactly.
contributing to the business accordingly.
Hmm.
Easier said than done, right?
100% easier. Totally.
Let's kind of jump into what, you're doing at Engineered Tax Services and the big beautiful bill and cost segregation studies, and kind of the guts of your business. I would love to, if you wouldn't mind, kind of jumping into that and talking a little bit about the value that you see in cost segs and what the big beautiful bill has done as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots to unpack there. I'll
Yeah.
make it as simple as possible. Engineered Tax Services was founded by Julio Gonzalez. We just celebrated our 25-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
This is very cool. We are now the largest specialty tax firm in the country. And our goal has been to, what Julio says, democratize the tax code and essentially make it applicable and attainable for everybody. And the premise of this company was that prior to creating a boutique firm for incentives, and that includes cost segregation or research and development credits or energy incentives. It's like these special credits and deductions that are in the tax code. These were things that like the top 1%ers, they were doing all day long. But they're also doing tax returns with like Price Waterhouse and E&Y, and they're paying, $500,000 a year in tax prep and consulting. But prior to that, it wasn't attainable for just the normal taxpayer.
Yeah.
And so what Julio's vision is why can't we bring this down and create this boutique where we can offer the same level of services, the same level of advantage, I should say, to every taxpayer who wants to invest and build a business or grow or essentially pursue the American dream and allow them to be able to take the same advantages. We hear it. I swear, every political cycle, the conversation is always, the top certain people aren't paying their fair share of tax. They are not cheating the system. They are using the code as it is structured to be used.
As we all should.
As we all should. That is the premise of the tax code, that if you would prefer to invest in your community, into infrastructure, into systems, into businesses or employees, the IRS will come in and say, you know what? If you would rather do that instead of pay your taxes, we'll trade. Instead of paying that, sure, go buy a building and we'll give you some benefits because we understand the value it creates in our communities and in just the general GDP and our economy as the country. So that's long-winded for we are a specialty tax firm that has really brought this down to where it is applicable for any investor, particularly cost segregation, the most applicable for anyone that owns any type of investment real estate. And the benefits of understanding how that works for individuals that start to wrap their head around, hey, I'm making a certain amount of money and now I'm paying a 30 or 40 or even 50% tax, depending on the state. A lot of California taxpayers are paying 50% in income taxes.
Crazy.
When people start to recognize and understand that they can actually make a choice with that, this is what are your personal goals? What are your personal achievements for yourself, for your personal wealth, for your family, for generational wealth? If that is something that someone is looking at, then real estate coupled with doing cost segregation, the one big beautiful bill. Of course, this administration is largely supportive of real estate and understands the benefits of investing in real estate and how that carries our economy, then just expands the ability to take all of these tremendous tax benefits associated with these investments that then trickle down to your personal return, offset your ordinary income in many cases. Yep. And instead of paying income tax, you now have this appreciating, growing asset that's paying you every month in revenue, and you just got a big refund. And it just becomes this cycle of growth and expansion that I personally have seen with clients for over 15 years as people just continue to grow and expand. Many times I've seen people retire and go off and, really that's all they do. They're not working their W-2 job anymore. It's created freedom for their families and for themselves. And it's incredible. It's inspiring to see how it can be used.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there and it really is inspiring. I could tell you for me personally, it's a pivotal moment to take advantage of these laws as we all should. I think you brought up a really, really good point. This isn't just for the 1%. This is for somebody who's starting a manufacturing business, a new entrepreneur that wants to get into real estate. They should be taking advantage of these tax laws because they're tremendously set up in their favor. And to not take advantage of them is not smart. For me, it's really compelling because I think about this. Yes, it's a tax strategy, but I also personally think about it as a capital allocation tool. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. And you touched on some of this. When you're out and you're buying assets, for us, we buy mobile home communities and self-storage. But when you're accelerating the depreciation on that asset, let's say you have a large portfolio like we do, and it's generating free cash flow. And then you're also executing a business plan where you're selling assets within that portfolio over the years. You are able to effectively offset the gain of that cash flow and offset the gain of the appreciation on those realized exits within that portfolio through this accelerated depreciation strategy. And
Yep.
with that tax savings, or that tax deferral, I should say, you're basically going out there and you're reinvesting. You've got this excess capital. For us, we really want to compound our returns, compound our growth for our investors. So we're going back into the marketplace. We're buying more assets and just kind of growing and scaling the strategy and rinsing and repeating that cycle over and over and over again. And if it's done right, you're really just deferring all of your tax, and you could continue to compound and build massive wealth for our investors. So it's really an exciting time. And I sure hope it stays in place for many, many years. And it's good for the economy. I think you bring up a great point. You're going to create a lot of jobs because that money isn't funneled into paying tax.
Mm-hmm.
It's funneled into buying more factory, buying more equipment, creating more jobs, growing and scaling. It's really an exciting new feature to the tax bill that should be used by all of us that own real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And we appreciate what you're doing and educating us on how that process works.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm happy to do it. And like I say, I get excited, and it's amazing to work with groups like yours that get it. But 100%, it becomes very much this snowball effect of growth, and being able to use the tax benefits as it rolls then into capital improvements. And then that's more deductions, like the whole snowball of how that rolls forward. And then, on the back end, many people always ask this question. One of your investors asked me this question as well. He was like, well, yeah, but then I'm going to be hit with recapture and I have to pay it all back. And it's like, but that's where the strategy comes into play. It is the continued reinvestment.
Yes.
Because in the big scheme of things, and you are a perfect example of this, when you have a really great asset that is just performing incredibly well, and you're continuing to grow and invest in these assets, why would you want to just sell it and cash out and walk away with your cash? Pretty much when we get into real estate, it's like you are in it.
Yeah.
So it's not just deferral, it ends up being permanent tax forgiveness, really, because most of our investors and our clients, the end goal is, this is my portfolio for life, even if I'm continuing in different properties, different mechanisms, 1031 exchanges, maybe even eventually into a Delaware statutory trust or syndicated funds like yours, and rolling into those things. Eventually, that someday is inherited by the next generation. And that is like really where the magic happens, because it's not just a deferral and you're going to pay it. You never pay that tax in that situation. And then it's carrying through to significant assets with a step up in basis for the future generation. So I think not enough people think about that. They think about what happens when I sell it. And it's like, yeah, the bigger question is what happens when you offer this to the next generation?
Yeah, I think that's a key distinction for anybody that is thinking, hey, I'm going to hang it up. I'm going to cash in my chips. This is not, I mean, you're going to have to pay the piper. But if you're active in this industry, which we plan to be for decades and decades to come, and you're going out there and you're redeploying that capital and buying new assets, you're just going to continually repeat that process over and over again. And if it's done right, there's a strong likelihood that you're just not going to pay tax for a very, very long time. So it's inspiring for entrepreneurs out there that want to get in real estate, that are in real estate, that aren't taking advantage of this strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I would take this moment to really educate yourself, reach out to people like Heidi that could help you through that process. Because to me, it's mind-boggling for those that aren't taking advantage of this strategy that's right in front of them today. And why do you think that is? Do you think it's just misunderstood? There's too much red tape. They haven't gotten the proper education. How would you instruct people that are in real estate, that are entrepreneurs today, to take advantage of this that aren't doing so right now?
Oh my gosh, great points and great question. The reasons why, number one, people think it's kind of scamish or too good to be true, because once they see the numbers, they're like, there's no way this is legal, which is crazy. The IRS in their guidelines says this is the preferable method of depreciation. So that's the other really fascinating thing, is cost segregation is more favorable, and the IRS leans on it more heavily than not applying cost seg. So number one, too good to be true. Number two, working with a tax advisor that is just not familiar. We see this with aging tax professionals We see this with families who have worked with the same tax professional for, 25, 35 plus years, and we have changed over time. Even when I started doing this, 16 years ago, a cost seg study often would be $20,000. We were doing cost seg studies for $100,000.
Wow.
Today, the cost and the way that we've been able to build the proper systems, we've been able to make it far more applicable and compelling, even on single family rental properties. So the cost is more reasonable. And the tax accounting space, that's a whole nother discussion we won't get into, but they're just overworked, overrun, and there's too many changes to keep up with. And so as it's evolved over the last 10, 15 years, if someone's working with a tax preparer that this isn't their specialty, then they just don't know. So that's the biggest thing. People just don't know. With that, we have really focused heavily on education, podcasting, YouTube videos, websites, learning hubs, articles, and really trying to provide information that's meaningful and valid to help taxpayers understand how to take advantage. So I always suggest people do their homework, be their own advocate. I always say it with medical things as well. Be your own advocate and explore what's available. And, that is our bread and butter and what we love doing and working with investors every day.
You said a word that for some could be a scary word, and that word is IRS.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of hone in on that for a moment and talk about what makes a good cost segregation study defensible. How do you protect your clients in the event of an audit in that instance? And I'm sure it's happened many, many times, versus a company that perhaps prepares a sloppy cost segregation study, and what that means if those don't do their homework in the selection process of a really good engineer to perform these tax segregation studies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a loaded topic. It's
I know there's a lot. Yeah.
It's perfect though, because with the onset of technology and AI and automation and all of this stuff, I think with all things, we start to see people playing with different options. One of the difficulties for taxpayers, for the lay person out there sort of trying to figure out what is all of this and how does it work. If you were to Google cost segregation, you may come up with, here's 10 different providers. What's fascinating is, as far as the IRS is concerned, there is no standard cost segregation equals this. Cost segregation is a concept. It is a shift to an accounting method. The deliverable, a cost segregation report itself, that is where consumers really need to be educated, because you can have 10 different providers and all 10 of those reports are dramatically different. So doing an online-based, computer-based, AI-generated quote unquote report will not withstand audit. It does not have the features that the IRS is looking for in what they define as a quality cost segregation study. So I always implore taxpayers, if you are looking for a provider, ask for a redacted study and compare what the actual report is. What is this deliverable that you are paying for? Because that is where there's a big disconnect. There's lots of companies out there saying all the right words, but in reality, what they're actually getting is something entirely different. So the key things that even so, a lot of firms are even using, even if it's not that detailed, is number one, engineering-based study. Not only engineering, but an engineering-based study that has a full component breakdown of the entire building and every asset that's there. Typical study should be 50 to 200 pages in length with the detail. So if you're getting a 5-page report with 8 lines of detail, that is not a detailed study.
It's probably not going to be defensible, right?
Correct. The other one is a physical site visit, and that is very important. It is defined in the IRS's guidelines for what is determined as a qualifying or a quality cost segregation study, is that there is a professional performing an on-site visit to confirm that what we have outlined in the report, we physically saw on-site. And we have really broken that out based on our actual experience. So again, it is defending the audit. It is creating the data we know that the IRS demands and creating a bulletproof report that has all of the data to help pull that full circle. So very important for taxpayers to be educated on what it is that they're getting, and don't fall into the trap of just thinking that a cost seg study is the same if it's from this person versus this person or this website or whatnot.
So not all cost segs are equal, I guess, is the big takeaway there. And
Yeah.
maybe not to get too down into the weeds or too technical, but kind of boiling this down to the fundamentals, just as a layperson trying to understand this concept, if you will, around segregation and breaking the asset out into its individual components. Maybe you could just take a minute just to kind of chat on that and double click on it, breaking down the asset into personal property, equipment, real property, and then the different schedules in terms of depreciation that are tied to those different components within the asset and why it creates that very large net operating loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The easiest way I've found to explain it that seems to resonate is your CPA is going to claim your standard deduction. That means you buy a piece of property, an investment property.
Let's say $1 million. You buy a mobile home park for $1 million.
Yep.
And say you don't use a cost seg as an example.
Yes, exactly. That taxpayer is going to assume an amount for land. We're going to sort of exclude the land discussion. So let's just say it's $1 million as the cost for our assets, the items that we've purchased. Okay. The CPA takes a standard deduction, which is your $1 million. They divide it out over 39 years, and you take a deduction. Depreciation is the value of the wear and tear of the asset. So it's like your car goes down an asset. The incredible thing about real estate, it's the only depreciating asset for tax purposes that actually appreciates. So it is actually going up in value, but yet you get to take a loss for the wear and tear on the asset. So that's why real estate's such a great investment.
It's a key distinction there, if I may. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the accountant. I'm just the investor here. But the beauty is you're booking the value at book value at cost. And while it may go up, you may have an appraisal that supports a higher valuation. You're not booking up or marking up the value of that asset for tax purposes. You continue to carry it on your books at cost, and then you're depreciating it, to your point. I just want to make sure that we get that distinction out there for folks.
Yep, absolutely. So a CPA is going to take the $1 million cost of those assets. They take the standard deduction. In this case, that would be $25,000 a year. You would take that against the income generated off that property, and you get to write off $25,000 automatically. Standard deduction, super easy.
Okay.
Cost segregation is just like you and I on our personal returns. If we have a business, we're going to itemize our deductions. Okay, the IRS allows you to itemize deductions and write off your home office or your miles for your vehicle or whatever. But what is the caveat to that? They're like, yeah, well, if you do that, you have to prove it. Did you really use it for business purposes? Where is the proof? So that is what cost segregation does. Cost seg creates itemized deductions. And we go in and we say, you bought $1 million asset. You didn't buy $1 million building, like a roof, windows, walls, doors. Last we checked, there were some security systems and there were some exterior light. There were some asphalts and landscaping. All of those things are totally agreed upon by the IRS as having shorter useful lives before they fail and have to be replaced. So 5 years for personal property, carpeting, appliances, bathroom fixtures, kitchen fixtures, those things, they know typically 5 years, you need to replace those. Outside land improvements, 15-year property, those things typically within 15 years. Asphalt typically needs resurfacing, repainting. You need to work on your sprinkler system. You're adding those costs. So the IRS says we'll let you deduct those much faster. So the cost seg extrapolates the value of those assets. In a mobile home park, it could be a significant portion, if not all of it. But let's just say it's 75% of it.
And would you say the reason for that is because, and here's my personal theory and opinion, and please tell me your thoughts. Typically, when you're buying a mobile home community, it's located in a secondary or tertiary market. Unlike if you're buying an office tower in Midtown Manhattan, there's a lot of inherent value on the underlying dirt. In a mobile home community, you could support comps that are a lot lower on raw land. Therefore, the majority of that purchase price would be kind of allocated to the different components, the infrastructure, the improvements, et cetera, which are going to qualify for this accelerated depreciation. Is that kind of, am I thinking about that in the right manner?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because all of those improvements are what we call tangible. You know, these are things we are using and that start to wear out. The other thing the IRS prefers, they want for investors to keep, there's a term for it. It says, we want investors to keep their properties in ordinary, efficient operating condition. And so the reason that they want you to claim deductions and depreciation for these assets is so that you have the funds to fix them while they fail. And as they are dilapidating, you go in and you replace them with new assets, especially think about apartment complexes. Nobody wants slumlord owners. They really don't. It's not good for society. It's not good for our community or for our infrastructure. We need those systems or finishes updated continually. So again, in that example, $1 million manufactured housing park, the infrastructure is all considered tangible assets. And with the one big beautiful bill and bonus depreciation, it's not uncommon to see that be, like I say, 75%. So just to put that in perspective, $1 million purchase could result in a $750,000 deduction immediately.
In year one.
Instead of $25,000 that your CPA will claim based on the standard deduction.
And that $750,000 then can be used. Let's say you sell a property in your portfolio and you book a $750,000 gain.
Yes.
Effectively, and I'm not giving tax advice, I'm just kind of speaking generally here. It wouldn't be illogical for one to assume that that individual wouldn't pay tax in that particular year.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. And it's what you talked about earlier is the ability to continue with the capital assets, capital improvements, rolling that over in a snowball-ish type of effect where we're being able to make transactional decisions and use one investment and the benefits of it to then offset the next investment and so on and so forth.
Well, they do say, I think one said it best, that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And I think this bonus depreciation structure really helps those investors with compounding who understand this structure and this process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's amazing. And I think really for me, what it makes me do is take a step back and say to myself, great investors don't only buy assets, they really understand what's inside of them and understand how to use them to really maximize returns for themselves. And for me as a GP, for my investors. Mm-hmm. And it's really a disservice for me or anyone else who's an investment manager, anybody who owns investment real estate for that matter, not to understand this process, because by not understanding it, you're foregoing your ability to compound gains, compound growth, which is really going to, I think, allow most entrepreneurs to bridge the gap between where they are today and where they want to go in terms of living their dreams.
Yeah, I don't think you could have said it any more beautifully. That's exactly what we've seen. And I think bringing it back to being an entrepreneur and making decisions, I think we all have to revisit, what's my why? And what makes me feel, I guess, motivated or meaningful or impactful, I guess. It sounds silly that, I'd work on tax credits and these things. The big picture is seeing people change their lives and seeing people start with a project and then continue to grow and become really successful in developing freedom and having time with their families or things that are important and passionate to them. So it's not just about money, but it is about, what ultimately are your dreams and goals as a human being, because there are ways to achieve it that are attainable. And it's been incredible to see it firsthand and watch people dive in and achieve success. And it's inspiring. So
yeah, well, it's a tool. It's a tool to live your dreams. And you, for one, have really gone out to the marketplace and shown people how to use this tool. But I guess in closing, Heidi, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, what is your why today in terms of where you are in your business, where you are as an entrepreneur, and where do you think your why is going to be, let's say 5 or 10 years from now?
Oh, man. I was recently, I don't know if you ever listened to the Diary of a CEO podcast, DOAC. I love that podcast.
I haven't. No, I'll have to listen to that.
It's so good. But he was talking with an investing guru a couple weeks ago, and he said something that really resonated. And he said, it seems to me that the people that have become really successful had a situation of significant loss or failure in their life that lit a fire in them that just set them on a trajectory of success. And they said, I will not be beat. And that hit me hard because I was in that situation. I went through a horrific divorce in 2007
Wow.
at the time when I was significantly in real estate. So
Okay.
maybe could not be a worse time with three small children on my own. And I went through the hardest times of my entire life. And I would tell you, it lit a fire. And I said, I will not be beat. And, I look back on it, I'm like, I don't know how I finished my master's degree with three kids and working multiple jobs all by myself. But it
Amazing.
was because I hit a position and I said, I need my kids to know that they can control their destiny. They do have choices. And if they won't listen to me, I have to believe that they will see me. That now my oldest kid's 30, they're all 26, 28, and 30 right now. And I am so proud of the fact that my kids are like, wow, I see what you've built, Mom. And like, it makes me emotional because that's my why. I want my kids to know that we do not live in a world and they are not in a place where they don't have choices.
Well, what an inspirational story and an inspirational mom you are for your kids. And I can't believe you have a 30-year-old child. You look great,
Well,
by
thank
the
you.
way. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but you said a lot there. But I think the big thing that you just said is you really wanted to, it was fire in the belly. You
Yeah.
had something to prove, right? And something deeper beyond yourself, right? You
Yep.
wanted
Yep.
to prove something to your children
Hmm.
and you wanted to live your life in an inspirational manner so they could see that and they could apply that. I think, not to put words in your mouth, in their life,
Yeah.
and how they could achieve their goals by witnessing what you've done, going through all those, the divorce, the great financial crisis, all these
Yeah.
difficult times. You just, one piece of advice when you're going through, hell and back and you got your head down and everything's on fire, one piece of advice for entrepreneurs out there to keep their head on straight and keep moving forward.
You know, it might not be the advice people want to hear, but
Okay.
I think too many people are afraid of the hard work. And yeah, it's a lot of work. It doesn't come easy. It's not going to come by, doing a little bit here and there. I worked my ever living hiney off for 10 years. And I was like, it was a grind,
Yeah.
but it is worth it and it does pay off. And if that's the only thing I can say that I see, and again, speaking to younger generations and my kids too, I feel like there's a little bit of a sense of, well, I don't want to work that hard and I don't want to do what I've seen the previous generations do. I want to just do what I'm passionate about. Fine, do what you're passionate about, but work hard and grind.
Yep.
Because even if you grind for 10 years, that might seem like forever. That is not that long.
It
It
goes by
goes
in a blink.
way too fast.
Yep.
And before you know it, you are on the other side of it and you've built something powerful.
Yeah.
So don't shirk the
Yeah.
hard work. Like it's worth it.
Yeah, I love that. And I subscribe to that notion too. I think what you're saying is sometimes there's just no hack.
Hmm.
Sometimes we're looking for the easy way around it. Sometimes you just got to put your head down and grind it out. It sounds
Yeah,
like that's how you made it through.
it's exactly right. I don't believe there's an easy button.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. It's
But
the hard truth, but
yeah.
it's great advice.
Well, and I feel like too, when you put the work in, the reward is greater. If there was an easy button, you wouldn't even appreciate it.
Everybody would do it, right? And
Yeah,
obviously that's not the case.
exactly.
I
Yep.
love that.
So, yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. What a truly inspirational story. How could people reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing at Engineered Tax Services and get in contact with you and hopefully utilize you for their next cost segregation study?
Yeah, absolutely. My email is Henderson. So my first initial last name, Henderson at Engineered Tax Services, which is our website, engineeredtaxservices.com. And then I'm on all the Instagram, Facebook, all of those under /tax, which is kind of my handle for really looking at tax opportunities, tax incentives, alternative investments. You were a guest on there as well because I think you have a great platform. And so, yeah, we're doing everything we can to just get the word out and help empower people.
Wonderful. And we'll share all your contact information for the audience as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate you being here with us today. This has been amazing. And thank you again for your time, Heidi.
All right, you too. Thanks, Matt.
All right.